Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. The primary is 2 weeks away. Special session gavels in tomorrow. We are here with the senator who's everything's going to run through in special session. Senator Karla May from the city of St. Louis, welcome back to the show.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good. I think the better question, though, is how are you? Tomorrow, you go back to Jeff City, the Senate gavels in, and they're going to talk about a special session on, I guess, violent crime, and the place that everybody's referencing violent crime has been the city of St. Louis. There's 5 measures. The governor's come out with some municipal leaders, with some police leaders. What is your take on the tone of the session, how it started, and what are the content of some of these proposals?
Well, basically, I think right now, I do agree that we need to do some criminal justice reform. But to try to do it in this window, to me, wouldn't be productive, because you have this window right before primary elections. Everybody is in the middle of an election. And I think that we have not had time to process what is the right criminal justice reform. You know, what can we do? And I think that we can work on that in the interim, and I think we can pick it up in January.
Okay, let me ask you this. This is the thing I've heard from folks that aren't in law enforcement. They're just folks around Jeff City that I may have visited with at the Grand Cafe or Spectator somewhere. If all 5 of these measures pass, as they're drafted right now, let's be honest, there is a murder issue in the city of St. Louis, in your district. If all 5 of these things pass, will this affect that murder rate?
No.
I think I found people that feel the same.
No.
A little skeptical about that.
So basically, you got to look at the history of St. Louis City and the violent crime. And people want to act like they want to compact it over these 4 years. So this is the violent crime has perpetuated over a period of time. But let me tell you, you have to look at the reasons why that crime has begun. And if you look at the structure of City of St. Louis, when you take it from the mayor's office on down, you have to look at how the allocation of resources are distributed and where we are doing economic development and where we're not doing economic development, where we're putting resource dollars and where we're not putting resource dollars. So if you can continue to starve communities and allow them to depreciate, and if you walk down a block and you got 8 vacant homes where roofs and things are falling off of the buildings, and kids are getting off buses, walking to school, seeing this dilapidation, you would have to ask yourself, you know, what type of message are you sending to those children? So we got 301,000 people in the city of St. Louis. There's no reason why you should have part of it developed and another part of it not developed. There has been an intentional, to me, an intentional over a 30-year period misallocation of resources when it came to economic development in the city of St. Louis.
Let's talk about the...
And that perpetuates crime, that perpetuates violence, that perpetuates poverty.
I don't think there's any serious person that could say that poverty is not linked to crime.
Yes, exactly.
Let me ask you something, though. As we tape this, the call has not been amended for special session, but there's a lot of talk, and there's talk last in the abbreviated regular session of something called concurrent jurisdiction. In the city of St. Louis right now, Kim Gardner's prosecutor, maybe the most well-known prosecutor in any jurisdiction in the state. She has the largest number of homicides that the police and her office have to investigate and prosecute. Some of them aren't, a large percentage of them aren't prosecuted because I guess they haven't solved the case. I'm sure there's a number of reasons. There's the Attorney General's wanted concurrent jurisdiction, which would be he gets to come in, and I think there's different procedures as get signed off by a judge somehow. He would then take over cases that he saw fit to within the jurisdiction. Now there's 2 ways to do it. That would be a definite change for the way things have been. This has been tried before and not worked. My assumption is special session could hinge on whether that's added to the call or not, and I think everybody's going to look to you to see how you react to that.
Well, it's going to be a game changer. And so let's unpack some things. So first of all, you said a lot of things in your statement. How crimes are prosecuted and the reasons why they're not prosecuted. First of all, most of the cases are plea bargain anyway before they even get to the prosecution. And then there's a lot of unsolved murders in the city of St. Louis before Circuit Attorney Gardner ever took office. So let's talk about those unsolved murders that haven't been solved because there hasn't been enough evidence for those murders being solved. And that goes a long way in the relationship of the police and the community in the city of St. Louis. So that goes a long way with building that trust of being witnesses for those murders. See, those are the things that we have to talk about. This problem or this situation didn't start when Circuit Attorney Gardner took office in 2016. She is taking office to correct a whole lot of problems that were already there prior to her taking office. And you can't correct those in 4 years. But what we have to look at, though, this is also a bigger window. You know, we have always seen in the city of St. Louis, which is a predominantly African-American community. According to the 2010 census, African Americans are the predominant demographic in the city of St. Louis by almost 14,000 people. So when you look at that, they're not, but that is not reflected in its governmental leadership. That is not reflected in its leadership. And so when you're talking about crime, poverty, the allocation of resources, and how we solve problems, that is a factor. That plays into that. That is a factor.
Are you going to filibuster the bill if it includes concurrent jurisdiction in the city of St. Louis?
That bill will not go anywhere if I have anything to do with it, if it got something to do with concurrent jurisdiction. And let me tell you why. If you wanted to, people have elected their prosecutor all across the state. They've elected the person that they want to serve as their circuit attorney. And if you're talking, we have an election coming up August 4th. The people have an opportunity to unelect or reelect the person that has been elected for that office. So you cannot silence the voice of the people. And that's where we get it all confused at. You know, the circuit attorney, the attorney general, if he wanted to be prosecuted, he should have moved to the city of St. Louis and ran for the office.
I knew Kim when she was a legislator. I saw there's a couple things. Those McCloskeys, the guy in the pink shirt with his machine gun out in front of his mansion. I mean, to me, you're a St. Louis politician. I'm just a simple West Butler County hillbilly. He looks stupid, but he didn't look criminal, right? And so I think Kim knew what was going to happen when she charged him. And I think it was predictable. The AG would do some court filing. The governor was going to pardon him. Is this not something that maybe fits everyone's interest 2 weeks before a primary?
This is amazing to me. So let's just unpack that a little bit.
Yes, ma'am.
You know,
I feel like we're moving. We're unpacking everything this morning.
You have a rich Caucasian couple who comes out and banishes weapons at a group of people walking down the street. You get me? Let's just flip the script for a minute. Because even if they was black and rich and banishing weapons at people going down the street, nobody would cry at all at the fact that they're being held accountable for what they did. Nobody would talk about how they was held accountable.
Would be looked at very differently in America.
And it amazes me how I hear people talking about civil rights investigation. Well, I want to know, where was the cry for a civil rights investigation when the undercover cop posing as a protester downtown got beat by the other police officers? Where was the cry when that black man got beat by his other officers? Caucasian officers. Where was the civil rights investigation cry then? Where was the civil rights investigation cry when the Department of Justice did a 6-year study on St. Louis County juvenile justice system and said that juveniles were denied their civil rights solely based on race? Where were all of these people? Why weren't they crying out for a civil rights investigation then? What we have is hypocrisy, and we need to stop. And so if she was not to hold them accountable, then who would hold them accountable? Now, if you want to look at change, it's hard for people to realize that change. And the biggest change is the first time in the history of St. Louis City, you have an African American in the office of circuit attorney. That's what you have. And when you're talking about it as head prosecutor, so it's difficult for other races or demographics to view crime through the eyes of an African American. You get me? And so it's just like when you're talking about the St. Louis County juvenile justice system. That office was not diverse back then when they did that study. There was no diversity in that office. So those individuals failed to understand that they were perpetuating racism. You get me? It's how you view a black child and a white child, or how you view a black suspect and a white suspect. We have to balance the scales of justice and make justice equal for all, regardless to race.
Maybe there's an opportunity here, though. I mean, I do agree with you. If that picture was an African-American couple with a machine gun in front of a modest home in North St. Louis City, I would view it differently, just internally. Just my whole life has led me to view that differently.
Exactly.
I don't think there's any way you couldn't. But if
Exactly.
Governor Parsons is going to intervene in some of these cases, I think that's a great thing. I hope there's a chance now, if he intervenes in this case for the pink shirt guy in front of the mansion, there's a lot of other Missourians that maybe they did something stupid, but really not necessarily criminal. Maybe you don't need a criminal prosecution. Maybe a lot of other folks could be hitting up 751-2000 and asking them to look into their situation.
Well, maybe, but we have a whole lot of pardons that's left on that's standing at the doorstep of the governor, where people are requesting pardons. We need to start there first.
One last thing: the kids going back to school next month. The governor, he channeled a little bit of Senator Karla May. Back home, we'd say it's how the cow ate the cabbage. He was honest with folks. He said, "Hey, kids are going to go back to school. Some of them will be exposed to this, and a few of them will get sick, and they'll have to go home for a few days till they get better." That just sounds like common sense truth.
Yeah, well, when you're a parent,
I am.
and somebody tells you your child is going to get sick, and this is not an ordinary sick. This is not a cold. This is not something that's simple. This is
But aren't
something.
you lying to them if you tell them there's not going to be any
Well,
problem?
I mean, it's not. I'm gonna put it like this: it's not a place of lying or not lying. What I think it is parents want to know what's the plan, and I don't think we have been very good at saying, if I would have came out and said, kids are going back to school, you have to meet with all of these school districts, and we have to have what we call a statewide plan. A statewide plan of action of how we're going to protect the kids. I think if we would have broached it that way, and said we got this statewide plan of how we're going to protect the kids, every classroom has to be divided this way with this number of kids, with this number of students, in case, we have something break out, say in this sixth group of students, we can take that group out and, still have the other
It
kids.
ain't that I don't trust Mike Parson, but old Wayne Wilcutt used to be on the Neelyville school board. Down and you take Lindbergh all the way to Arkansas, and right before you get to Arkansas, the last left is Neelyville, where I'm at the school. I trust Wayne Wilcutt to know how to handle Neelyville School District better than Mike Parson.
Well, I mean, that's true. But at the same time, as governor and I'm the head leader, I have to get together with those school districts. And we have to work out a plan. When this hit, back in March, September, back in February and March, we had to start off working out a plan for those individuals. And it's a broad, this hit people, and I think we were more reactionary than anything. And so at that point, when you're reactionary, at some point you got to slow down and we got to start planning. So I don't know if people are really, going to, there are people that are angry by that statement, but that's coming out of, I think, care for children. And it's, being afraid of people dying.
Well, I'm afraid we're running short on time, but I appreciate you making the time. And I think everybody will get to listen to you pick up this conversation, I guess, when the Senate adjourns tomorrow.
Well, the Senate will adjourn tomorrow, but we got to say one thing. We cannot talk about, murders without talking about, the 150 murders in St. Louis City without talking about the 1,000 deaths from COVID. I think all of this has a relationship for the lack of health care, that these poor communities don't have, and resources in that way too.
Thank you for joining us, Senator.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. Jim Lembke and David Barklage talk about Senate primaries after this.
Mark Mantovani alone took on the corrupt machine. Now he'll finish the job. Mark Mantovani. He built a national business creating nearly 800 good-paying jobs. And during the last recession, Mark cut his pay in half to save jobs. The only candidate for county executive with the experience to rebuild our economy after COVID and create a more equitable county with more opportunity for everyone. Career politicians haven't gotten it done. Democrat Mark Mantovani. Real leadership for a change.
Your energy needs are changing. That's why at Ameren, Missouri, we're not waiting on the future. We're building it with the Smart Energy Plan, advancing thousands of projects across the state, helping reduce emissions through cleaner energy sources, boost reliability with self-healing equipment, and better withstand storms with new composite poles. Moving Missouri forward and bringing us all a little closer together. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Every year, billions of our tax dollars go to Washington, D.C. And those tax dollars, where do they go? To 37 other states like California and New York to pay for their health care. Amendment 2 would fix that. By expanding Medicaid, Amendment 2 would bring our tax dollars back to Missouri to protect thousands of healthcare jobs, help keep our rural hospitals open, boost our economy, and deliver healthcare to more veterans and hardworking Missouri families. Vote yes on Amendment 2.
Welcome back this week in Missouri Politics. Opinion Maker panel time. We have enough opinions. You only need two. Former Senator Jim Lembke, the gentleman of the Senate. Welcome back to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks.
David Barklage, Dean of the Republican Party. Welcome back, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Let's start. We'll go around these Senate primaries. You, several clients on one side. You, the point man in the Conservative caucus. David Barklage down the lead belt. We have Elaine Gannon, Josh Barrett, a veteran, Kit Sissom, businessman already. Looks like right now maybe Gannon has a little bit of a lead in that race.
I think so. I think you see Sissom and Barrett's base the same.
From the same town, Farmington.
Same thing, and so that gives Gannon, an advantage there. But again, remember that primaries are decided normally by conservative voters. So I think that at what point in equilibrium tips behind Kent Sissom, I think you'll see him grow. But Elaine is just a super person. Her husband is well liked.
County
Oh, yeah,
executive,
absolutely.
Yeah. You have brought on a person I don't think a lot of people in politics knew, Josh Barrett. You guys have helped him come through. I think he come from, I would think, very little name ID or knowledge to a real factor in this race.
Well, he's been very active down in his area in the Republican Party, elected down there. As a veteran, he's got an interesting resume. I think that he's working very hard.
I've been one of the most aggressive campaigns.
He's aggressive, yeah. And so I think that it's a very interesting race. It's one that we never thought that we would have a candidate. We worked real hard to recruit a candidate in the district, but right now I think it's a toss-up.
Yeah, there's a couple folks you tried to recruit earlier that's a little bit like, oh man, I should have ran for that.
Probably so.
I think so too. When I saw that number was like 25-21 Barrett, I thought, I bet you there's a few reps that wish they would have made that race.
Right.
Let's talk about Cape Girardeau County down in a district that everybody thought is the Cape Girardeau district. You have Holly Rader and Kathy Swan. Our numbers show Holly Rader up 7. Other polls have her up 20 and more. It may not be a Cape Girardeau district anymore.
It's interesting because I know that when we started really looking at this, I called my old friend Senator Crowell and said, so tell me how this works down here. And he says, you can't win it if you're not from Cape County. I mean, he just flat out, that was it. So I think it's very interesting. I think it really speaks to how hard Holly works, and I think that she's going to win this race.
Talented candidate. Dave Barklage, you know a few things about Cape County, being from there. I have to say, I was surprised at the lead. I would say most the conventional wisdom would be Holly Rader has built a lead coming out of Scott County there. The race isn't over, but the lead surprised you?
No, I think the team that's supporting Holly has some national experience, and they've had some opportunities to see some early primaries around the country and adapt those tactics. The problem is everything's changing so rapidly in this country. What you learn in April may not be particularly helpful in August. 2 weeks is a long time. Jim knows, we all know. 2 weeks is a long time, and that's when you see these candidates go on broadcast TV. In a lot of the races were 3 ways. It makes it dramatic. We'll talk about that difference in a minute. But in this race, I think I've heard a lot of strong points on Holly in Cape Girardeau. Holly is more the activist. Kathy was more the community sort of leader. And so it'll be interesting how that breaks out in this primary, because it's truly sort of the old Republican versus the new Republican here. And so it may be closer than I think some of those earlier polls showed, but it's very spirited. And again, we'll see if the tactics that Holly's team learned in other races, if they work here.
Let's talk about the burnt district over in Cass County, where the federal government burned it all one time. They built it back up to be quite a place here in Cass County, kind of south there. Ed Emery is term limited. You have Rick Bratton and Jack Bond. Our numbers show at a 1-point raise, the marginal lead for Rick Bratton, but it's totally a statistical anomaly. But you got about half of that district undecided. Right to Life has come in big for Rick Bratton and doubled and tripled down on their endorsement. Ed Emery's helping Rick Bratton. Jack Bondon has a ton of support. It looked like he had. I was over there recently. He's done a ton of work up and down that district. David Barklage, what's going to be the deciding factor with half that district undecided right now?
Again, I think it's a lot like Cape Girardeau. I think it's sort of establishment Republican, sort of that meets sort of the Republicans that we've used to sort of the new Republican Party. And I think those two, it's very spirited. They're both working very hard. I think it's a toss-up down the line. I think intensity may favor Bratton, but I think Bondon is a good competitor. He's got a great story to tell.
What's interesting in all these races that we've covered thus far is that you've really got the contrast between everybody purports to be a constitutional conservative. Everybody's got it on their materials. Yeah. But you really do have contrast between these candidates in these races. And this is another one where, Rick Bratton has 8 years of serving in the House and has a record. He has Ed Emery's endorsement. He has Missouri Right to Life. Jack is a good guy. I mean, and Jack's working hard, and Jack is popular with the establishment. But you're seeing these lines drawn in all these races, and I think it's very interesting what's going to happen on August 4th and how we wake up on August 5th as far as where our primary voters are going to be. I agree with David. I think this is a toss-up race. But when you see how outgunned Rick Bratton was in this race as far as resources and how the special
You're a pretty big gun, though. Let me ask you, just from a campaign perspective, you've funded the vast majority of this race through the PAC you're affiliated with. When you think about, okay, here we are 2 weeks out, we got half the electorate undecided. What is a strategy you employ to try to sway those folks over that haven't made their mind up yet?
Well, more of the same. Whatever we're doing to keep Rick, or whatever Rick is doing to stay in this race, I mean, more of the same. Just keep it up.
So let's go down to Table Rock Lake area. David Barklage. David Cole, longtime Republican activist. A lot of folks been around politics a long time, know him. Mike Moon, a very colorful legislator in the House. I've always thought that race would be interesting because if you just kind of tertiarily view the Capitol, you'd think of him as the guy that, maybe doesn't vote with the caucus a lot and the cutting the chicken. But if you just meet Mike Moon, very nice guy, very well dressed, very gentlemanly. I would think on a door down in David Sater's district, Mike Moon would do very well with folks when he just meets them.
Look, I think my good friend John Bruner loves Mike Moon. I have other friends, and I've worked with David Cole in the state committee. That I think that both have their strengths. And again, I think this is a race like the others that, the problem in these campaigns when you start throwing the labels out a whole lot. We don't know right now in this kind of world how much people are going to buy. When I teach campaigns and primaries, it's geography first because of where people actually know you, where they know you're not this crazy liberal that dresses up as Hillary or whatever. Or 2, it's name ID, just give that name ID. And 3, gets down to ideology. It's sort of hard to see how some of these are going to break. I think they both have strengths. I think it's a very strong campaign, and I think it's anybody's guess.
Right. You feel good about Mike Moon right now?
I do. Yeah. I do. He was one early on that I was concerned about, and with looking at the polling numbers that are coming back from a number of different areas, I think Mike has worked hard. He's got a great grassroots group. He had groups from all over the state. Like David said, our friend John Bruner really is interested in this race. I think this is the one that I might be the most comfortable with right now.
Numbers really. Let's go a little further east. You got the old Chuck Ferguson district where Mike Cunningham is right. Wendell Bailey country. Robert Ross looks like he's opened up a real lead over Carl Esslinger and Van Kelly.
I think this is a slam dunk. I look forward to Robert Ross being a senator and to be in the Senate working with the conservative caucus.
David Barklage, when I shut my eyes and I think about Howell County and Texas County, I just think of Robert Ross, a big burly self with a chainsaw. He just, in my mind, he fits that district.
You would until you really understand who Karla is, and I represent Karla, but she was raised by a single mother, 3 kids. When she was 17, she was a truck driver. She worked in a factory. She was married 13 times. They were homeless at times. Karla went to college, got all her degrees, first woman superintendent of schools, and she told me the worst day of her life was when her mother died. And the thing that her mother taught her in terms of character is that no one owes us anything. And so her story, I think, is authentic in terms of who she is. And Robert and Van Kelly, don't count him out. He and Robert are sort of in the same space. Van has just put a group of money in, and so in the last 2 weeks, it'll be interesting.
Well, Van Kelly's well thought of in that area.
Does Karla and Van both turn on Robert, and how much does that move the race? I think you're going to see some surprises.
Let's talk about maybe the top district in the state, obviously. I think we'd all agree. The 25th down on the Boot Hill. You got 4 candidates running. Steve Cookson, former rep. Jeff Shawn, incumbent rep. Eddie Justice, an activist down there. And Jason Bean, a farmer. Our numbers show it high up between Justice and Bean, with Shawn's got a pile of money still left to spend, a little further behind. How's that race end up?
Boy, I'll tell you what, that is really a nail-biter. We have Eddie Justice and Jeff Shawn both said they joined the Conservative caucus, so we've really kind of stayed out of that race. I don't know much about Jason Bean, but I know that he's well respected. Yeah. So I mean, at this point, again, I think it's a toss-up.
Dave Brothers, the Flatlanders are going to vote for Bean, right?
Yeah. I mean, geographics there is a major part. A few years ago, when you and I first started doing races, Poplar Bluff was 80% of the primary. Today, it's like 34%. And Kennett and those other areas that were old
Dixie.
And
you got 3 folks running from there.
Oh, yeah. And so, one, the dynamics, favor Bean. 2, the Beans, I remember for Bill Emerson in 1980, Otto Bean was a Republican, was Bill Emerson's person for Pemiscot County. Now, their farm actually was in Dunklin County, but there were no Republicans in Pemiscot County. And so Bill actually had to stay with the Beans, with Jason and his dad, because no one would either rent him a room or we were afraid for his safety down there. So Bean is, I think, an authentic Republican, and I think that's going to, along with his roots and the network of the farm community, I think that gives him a favor. But look, Eddie and Jeff are good people. All
right, give me a prediction here. We're running short of time. Currently, you have 6 members of the Conservative caucus. Let's assume Andrew Koenig wins his competitive general election in the fall. How many will you have come January?
I would safely say we'll have 9.
9. Where do you think that number's at, David?
I think Jim could be right, or it could be wrong. I think that everything next 2 weeks is for change, but it could be 9.
Who won the week?
I think Robert Ross did, and I'm going to show you here why. Because Robert Ross took a female candidate and made her anatomically incorrect, showing a penis, and then sort of outlined other parts of her. I think that's going to cause him a problem in the next week, but I'm going to give him the win of the week.
Well, that's a striking picture. We know David didn't win the week after that. Senator, who won the week?
I would say probably Senator Bill Eigel. I think what he's experiencing at the doors in a very hot, primary in so many different ways that represents the new Senate. This may be the first time this has ever happened to have a sitting senator, Republican senator, have a primary run against him. And things are going well, and he's going to come out on top. And this is something that is going to have to be addressed as we move forward in the future.
Thank you both for joining us. I'm going to say Blake Hurst, the retiring Farm Bureau president from up in the great Northwest. He's going to be leaving in December. He has served not only the agriculture community, but rural Missouri, and the entire Midwest. We'll see you next week for
This Week in Missouri Politics, sponsored by the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts, Spire, and Sterling Bank.